All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Timeout with Tackle What's Next, where we speak to athletes and execs about how sport has made a difference and changed the course of their lives and the lessons they've learned in life after the game. I'm your host, Danielle Berman. I am the founder and CEO of Tackle What's Next, where we work to change the narrative around life after sports. So thanks for taking a time out with us tonight. We are talking to Dr. Derrick Burgess. Dr. Burgess is a board-certified orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine specialist. His pursuit in medicine actually stems from an injury he experienced playing high school football. He attended Xavier University of Louisiana. He majored in biology pre-med, and after graduating summa cum laude, Derrick continued his education at Howard University here in Washington, D.C. for med school training and orthopedic surgery residency. So now he is the medical director of the South Central Sports Medicine in Laurel, Mississippi, and he's the host of a great show called Timeout with the SportsDr podcast, where life, sports, and medicine intersect. So I'm super excited to have Dr. Burgess here with us tonight. I'm really interested to hear his journey, how he got into the medical field, and what he's doing as a podcast host. So I see he's here. We're going to bring him up on the screen and we'll get started. Thanks everybody for joining us. Hello. How's it
Hello.
going?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for coming on. So excited to chat. I think it's not often that we have other folks that are hosting podcasts doing similar things. So it's always great to speak to a fellow storyteller. So welcome and thanks for taking the time to be here.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, well, I want to start off just with how have you been? What's new? Anything exciting going on this summer? It looks like you're at the office, but is there any vacations you've been going on? Catch us up with what you've been up to.
Sure. So just wrapping up another day in the office, but it's football season. So, football season kicks off this weekend. So vacation time is over for sure. But I always say this is the most wonderful time of the year, but it's definitely the busiest time of the year for me as a sports doctor.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about your practice. So you primarily work with athletes, is that correct? Like, tell us a little bit about what you do, why athletes have been such a big part of your, the work, the people you serve. Like, tell us a little bit about your practice and your expertise.
Yeah, so I practice orthopedic surgery, but I specialize in sports medicine. Now, I see people from, infants to elderly people, but I really specialize with treating athletes. And that includes people from, 10, 12, rec league, all the way up through professional athletes, even your weekend warriors. So many things that we deal with, of course, many things we handle from an athletic standpoint are non-surgical injuries. You have a lot of sprains, bruises, fractures, but also with serious injuries like knee ligament injuries or shoulder ligament injuries or tears that require surgery, but we also do those as a sports doctor.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I mentioned this in the intro, but you actually played sports yourself. And so I want to hear a little bit about way back in your first sports experience. Like, do you remember the first sport you played and how you made it to football? Like, tell me a little bit about your sports journey.
So I guess my first sporting activity was t-ball, and that only lasted for a year. My parents vetoed the whole baseball thing, and I definitely understand now because they wanted to have a summer. So after the t-ball, I started playing football, and I started playing that at 8 years old and had a great time. I played football all the way through high school and had the ability to play small college ball, but I decided to not play when I went to college. And at that point, I knew that I wanted to be a physician, and I started to kind of focus in on my studies at that point.
Yeah. Why did sports, or how do you feel like sports has made such an impact on your life? I mean, obviously you're working in sports medicine now, but can you give us a little insight as to like why medicine and why sports medicine and how has sport stayed with you through your job?
Yeah, so I think you might have mentioned an injury gave me an introduction to orthopedics, but I love what sports can do for individuals as well as, especially team sports. And it teaches you a lot. I mean, I think sports mirror and reflect life. You have these tough games where you lose and you have to bounce back, or, you're down and you have to keep playing through tough times. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But as long as you learn from that experience, I think you always win. So I always like to speak with athletes, and I get to interact a lot with teenagers and young adult professionals. And I really like to try to connect with them on more than just an injury. What are you here for? I can treat your knee, I can treat your ankle, but tell me about what's your focus for life. Okay, even if you make it to be a professional athlete and you finish playing in the late 20s or 30s, what are you going to do with the next 30 years of your life? So I feel that this gives me an opportunity to really be able to connect with a lot of young athletes and a lot of young adults that I would not be able to connect with if I was not a physician.
Yeah. Do you feel like the fact that you also played sports and you had the opportunity to kind of play at a higher level gives you some kind of connection with the young people you are talking to about these things? Do you feel like you have this level of trust and not only on the medical side of like, oh, he knows what I'm going through, but also just on that life experience side? Like, I've been in your shoes. I know what you're going through in that kind of emotional, mental side as well.
Yeah, so I think it's important to be able to connect because a lot of this is about relationships. And in order for someone to be able to trust you to take care of them, they have to trust you as an individual. So not only
Mm,
does that come from you being able to have a track record of doing good work, but you have to really just make a connection with the person. And I've been there. I've struggled, not only on the field, but in medical school and overcoming obstacles. So I know how it feels to something that you work for and it feels like it's slipping out of your hands or being taken away from you. So I feel that when you're dealing with athletes, especially an injured athlete, first you have to develop a relationship and let them know that, hey, I'm here for you no matter what. Your well-being is my priority. And I think from that you build a trust relationship, because once you leave my office, I don't really know what you're doing. And I have to be able to trust you to do follow-up protocol to get you back. And you have to be able to trust me that the protocol that I have you on will work for you as an
mm.
athlete.
Yeah, no, I really, really like that perspective. And I know you talked a little bit about the inspiration behind, going into medicine, but I want to talk about that specific transition. You mentioned that you kind of decided on your own. You could have played small college ball, and you decided that you weren't going to do that. I want to know what that experience was like. Was that your last time on the field? Did you have any kind of emotional kind of feelings or just like mental hiccups that you were like, okay, now what am I going to do? Or was medicine really that driving force of like, I'm trading in my athlete identity for this medical field that I want to go find? Or was it really like this big challenge to kind of say,
Mhm.
uh-oh, what am I going to do now? And then that medical idea popped in your head. Give us a little bit of a snapshot, because it seems like you had this path kind of laid out for you, but tell us what was really going on during that time when you were making those decisions.
Sure. So if you ask me this question at 12 years old, when I'm tearing up the Pee Wee leagues, I think I'm going to play professional ball. But by the time I made it to high school, I knew I was a good athlete, but I knew I would not be a professional athlete. And I knew that medicine would be my profession. Now, being with sports medicine and being able to be on the sideline and walking out of those tunnels and walking out of the field house, sometimes it feels just like it's game day for me. So I definitely enjoy being able to still be around the sport. So it definitely
Mm-hmm.
makes it easier. After I played my last high school game, I was able to do some intramural sports in college, but it's not the same, when you have the teammates and you're playing for a common goal. But, I have realistic expectations from sports, and, I'm able to give back to the sport that I love still. And that I feel like that's great.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you talked also about the young people, mentoring them, not just around, helping them with their actual injury, but mentoring them around, what is going on in your life, and what are you going to do for the next 30 years, right? I want to know from your experience, you clearly had this guiding direction of medicine was something that you
Mhm.
really wanted to be a factor in your life. I'd love to know what kind of helped you find this path, and what did you do that helped set you up for success in that path and pursuing that path? Or do you feel like anything set you up for success that you did, just in terms of advice to other athletes that might be thinking, okay, well, I don't know if I'm going to go professional. I want to try playing in college. Maybe I want to try to go professional, but I'm interested in thinking about something else. Like, what advice would you give to them around how to set yourself up for success towards exploring another path outside of being an athlete?
Yeah, so I think mentorship is key as well as getting exposure. So what I would tell an athlete, especially when you're in a college situation or a situation where you're giving a lot to the university and you have a lot of fans and sponsors and people who are around who want to get your time, also take some of their time to learn about the career that you might be interested in. Like I mentioned, an injury allowed me to get into an orthopedic surgery office that allowed me to connect with a potential mentor, so I expressed interest, and he was glad to have me come back to shadow him in the office and to start going to see surgeries as a high school student and as an undergraduate student. And that helped build confidence that this is what I want to do. I feel like, many times you have a dream or a thought of what you want to do or you think you want to do, but until you actually see it up close and experience it, you really don't know. So I would say the number one thing is get exposure and find a mentor.
Yeah. Oh, that's such great advice. I think exposure is so important, and it's doesn't have to be getting a full-time job in that field, right? It can be that
Right.
shadow or finding somebody that will let you follow them around for the day, or just, experiencing something yourself and being close with it and saying, "Oh, this is interesting. I want to explore this more." So I love that. I love that advice. And I want to kind of dive into the podcast here a little bit too.
Okay.
Tell me, what's the inspiration behind the podcast? How's it been going? Like, tell us a little bit about why you decided that you wanted to start this podcast and talk about life, sports medicine, and that intersection.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the way I try to connect with my athletes, that's a one-on-one relationship. I have a limited amount of time. I cannot reach everyone, but the podcast, and it allows me to collaborate with other people like yourself who might be able to deliver helpful information to my audience or to someone that I'm trying to mentor. So my podcast is all about uplifting others, showing what's possible, because many times you don't get exposed to certain careers, or you might have an idea, but you don't really think that it's possible because, hey, I didn't pass this test, or hey, no one in my family has ever graduated high school or graduated
Mm-hmm.
college. So my show is to show you what's possible, number one, and kind of the three pillars that I stand on. That we want to strengthen your mindset, because mindset is important no matter what task you're taking on. We want to help you grow your assets. So we talk about financial literacy. We talk about investing. We talk about real estate and different things of that nature. And then to give you practical tips so that you can achieve whatever level of success that you want to achieve for your personal life. And my definition for success and your definition for success are probably going to be vastly different. But whatever that means to you, you can achieve it if you work hard and if you have, good people around you to help you.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love the tips because I think there's a lot of advice out there that people will offer. And then there's no like next step, right? Like, oh yeah, you should,
Right.
find a mentor. Well, how do I do that? Right? Like, what are the tips? What are the steps? So
Yeah.
I love that you're giving actionable advice and not just advice, because I think there is a difference, and it's
Sure.
very easy to give broad advice. And then everyone's
Yeah.
kind of like, well, that's good, but then how do I actually act on it? So I love that. And I love the different topics, and the idea that like everyone wants something different and everybody
Hmm.
has their own wants, goals, needs, desires. So I think that's awesome. Tell me what it's like interviewing people. Like, how do you enjoy it? Do you feel like you learn from the guests you have on? Like, tell me a little bit about that experience and what it's been like kind of creating the content that you're putting out.
So I've enjoyed the ride. I've been doing it now for, I guess, 14 months, and I've learned from every single person that I've sat down and had a conversation with. And it's something that I feel was almost a lost art, especially going through the pandemic and being socially distanced and disconnected from people. And, we live in a society now where you text or you send pictures or whatever, but actually talking to people, picking up a phone and calling someone, some people might have never even done that before. You just shoot a message across, shoot an email, you're in an email chain. But to be able to sit down and connect and discuss things has been a great experience. And I learn from everyone that I connect with. And, I've been able to talk to a lot of CEOs. I talk to a lot of other physicians. I talk to athletes, and everyone brings something different to the table. But at the same time, people are all going through the same thing overall. And I think that one thing that I like to show is that it's okay to make mistakes. On social media, a lot of times you see everyone's best foot. I don't mind sharing some of the mistakes that I've made along the way to maybe possibly help you avoid that. And
Mm.
also to still show you that you can stumble along the way and still be successful.
Yeah. Oh, that's so powerful because I agree. Social media is like everybody's like profile, like it's your LinkedIn, like it's all your highlights, it's your accomplishments. Like nobody's really going out there and posting, the worst pictures of themselves or the worst
Right.
moments of their lives. They're posting the best because that's the fun part. But
Yeah.
you can definitely get lost in that, like, oh, well, I'm not doing great. So apparently I'm not, like everybody else.
Hmm.
But I really love that you share the mistakes. And I agree. I think interviewing people is so much fun. I love getting to meet people and hear their stories. And I know we're getting close to our time here, but I just have a couple more questions for you. I
Sure.
would love to know in terms of, the athletes you're speaking with on a podcast or mentoring in your office, right? Or you're helping with injuries, what's the most important advice you feel like athletes need to know around their future outside of sports? Like what are athletes not thinking about, or what do they need to start thinking about right now in terms of navigating that time and figuring out what is next for them?
So one thing for an athlete, you never know when your last snap, last shot is going to be. It can end, your career can end at its peak with one injury and one misstep. So I think that you should always be looking to what can you do next. Athletes have a lot of skills that they acquire through the game, whatever the sport is, learning how to push through tough times, learning how to overcome obstacles. And these are things that CEOs will love to have on their team. So know that you are very valuable, and know that no matter what mistakes you made in the past, you can overcome those mistakes. And people want to have people on their team that are winners. So that winning mentality, if you can translate that from the court to the workplace, you will stick out and you will shine, because many people don't want to work. And if you bring a work ethic to the table, CEOs, a boss, anyone will want to have you. And, now with this athletes, whatever you're struggling with can be the key to helping someone else. So I want you to know that. Don't be ashamed of whatever your shortcoming may be, because that can be your superpower.
Wow, yeah, powerful advice. I love that. And I also really love the idea that always be thinking about it because you never know when you're going to need that next chapter, but also like you already have so much to offer right now, today, at this moment, with all the skills you've learned from sport. It's just about that mindset, bringing that into that other arena. So I love that. That's all such great advice. So I want to know two questions. Where can people hear the podcast, first of all, and connect
Sure.
with you? And then what's coming up? Any big episodes, any cool interviews you've recently done that you want to plug, highlight for people to go check out some of the great conversations you're having?
Yeah, so you can find me, number one, on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, on LinkedIn. But my website is kind of the landing station, Dr. Derrick, thesportsdoctor.com. Go to that website. You can hear all the podcast episodes. You can send me a message. You can actually send a voicemail, give me feedback. I always love hearing from people about the episodes. One of the interesting interviews that I have coming up is someone that you actually connected me with was Ben Troop.
Oh,
That was a
yeah.
great interview. That'll be coming out on Labor Day. But I have, the last 6 weeks or so, we've been talking a lot about mindset. We've been talking about overcoming your limitations. I have spoken with several CEOs, and I have several more coming up. Recently, I have the episode coming out next week is one that you definitely don't want to miss. I have a former sports agent, Sue Izzo, who
Ooh.
was one of the top and had some of the top snowboarders, surfers. But
Mm.
we're going to talk about the importance of building your own brand and how it's important to be authentic when you're building your brand, because if not, then other potential sponsors or supporters will be able to see through that. So that's going to be a great episode. But I have so many interesting people that I've been able to speak with. From CEO of Saber Bats, Derrick Richards. I saw him pop up earlier. His story is great. He's designed his own bat, and just from paper to creating a bat, getting his patents. That's an interesting episode. I've been able to sit down and talk with my grandfather, sit down and talk to my wife about things. And, it's just great because you can connect with so many different people on different levels.
I love it. I'm so excited. I want to tune into this episode around the branding. That sounds fascinating with the
Yeah.
extreme sports. And, anytime Ben Troop's on a podcast, I got to tune in because I know he's going to drop some knowledge. So I'll
Oh
have to
yeah.
tune into that one when it's out.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. And Derrick, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Thanks for coming on our show. We will definitely put in the links to this episode when we share it out, where they can find you, where they can find the podcast, your website, all that kind of stuff, because it's really important. And I think the stories that you're sharing and the perspectives you're sharing can really help everyone just think about what they're trying to achieve, how to do that. And also, I love the mistake feature. Like, we're not perfect. We can make mistakes. We can learn. We can grow. So thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for coming on and sharing a little bit about it with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, we will get this out here. We will get everybody that great info. And Derrick, thanks again for being here and for your support. This was awesome.
All right.
We will see you next time. And everybody, be sure to tune in to Time Out with the Sports Doctor. Coming up, some big episodes. So thanks
Yeah.
again, Derrick. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody. Bye.
Bye.